Demon hunters, warring gods, and forgotten worlds await with T&M Comics. Click the links below to enter their fantastical realm.
We just picked up this movie on Radar. It's
what? It's what?
Whatever it is, people have gone mad trying to decipher it.
What am I watching here? Is this a musical, a spoof, or a drug trip? What sort of twisted mind came up with this insanity?
Same one who wrote Die Hard, apparently.
Really? Ah, he also did the screenplay to Judge Dredd, and now everything makes so much sense.
She needs to see this. She's the only one who can handle this.
This is unlike anything she's ever done before. Are you sure she's up to the challenge?
She has to. She's our only hope.
For all we know, this is a movie from Australia. It has Christopher Lee, and there's a song about booze written by the guys who did Rocky Horror. Are you in, or are you out?
You had me at Christopher Lee. Off it, bailiff. Even our shitty budget isn't going to be broken by a Fiverr commission once every 6 years. Now, where were we? Ah yes, the return of Captain Invincible. Let's examine it, shall we? We start with some newsreel footage of our titular superhero through the years, from beating up bootleggers to crashing Nazi planes to hanging out with Boy Scouts to being dragged before the House of Un-American Activities Committee.
Impersonating a military op, flying without a pilot's license, wearing underwear in public.
I'm not sure if it's residual annoyance from Love's Labor's Lost, but this prologue irritates me. It's like if the lawyer bit at the beginning of The Incredibles went on for 10 minutes. About the only relevant information is that Invincible chats with a Boy Scout who foreshadowingly declares he'll be the president one day, and that his brush with McCarthyism sends Captain Invincible into a 30-year exile in Australia, where he spends his days lurching drunkenly on a mountaintop and singing selections from On the Town at the top of his lungs. Been there, done that.
The Bronx is up, and the battery is down. The people ride in a hole in the ground.
Back in New York, the evil crime lord, Mr. Midnight, which really is the best name for an evil crime lord played by Christopher Lee, is preparing for the final phase of Operation Ivan, which involves crude Italian stereotypes?
Now, why don't you take another look at our homes?
I got to live here.
You are going to live here.
We are going to live here. And we're going to go home and pack.
So, the villain's evil scheme involves using some kind of mind control ray to get ethnic caricatures to move out of the city and into the suburbs? I mean, it's not exactly collecting the Infinity Stones, is it? Anyway, now that we've offended a large portion of the population, what's next on the agenda? Well, according to K-Expo Radio, the President of the United States is currently visiting Australia to conduct a survey of the U.S. Defense and Research Facility, which is in Australia because... The point is, there's been an incident at the facility and everyone there is half-naked and laughing uncontrollably.
The giggle gun was clearly used.
You do have to admire anyone who can say that line with a straight face. The giggle gun was used to steal the hypno ray, and there's some war room business that has a few funny ideas, but they're stretched beyond the breaking point, and what's the word I'm looking for this business right now?
Bullshit! Bullshit! Bullshit, 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 bullshit.
Yes, that'll do. To sum up, the world needs a hero, and we have just the song break for the occasion.
Our troubles are over. Yes, they are. That's what I see. That's what you say. I know he's gonna find it. Yeah, he's gonna find that.
I love how Token Black General is just sitting there watching the crazy unfold. Like he knows he's the only one in the room with common sense, but nobody's going to listen to him anyway. And the song is okay. It's not spectacular, but it's got a nice gospel riff, and the War Room denizens making like Gwen Verdon is good for a small laugh. An APB goes out for Captain Invincible, and it just so happens that a Sydney plainclothes officer by the name of Patty Patria recently encountered him when he rescued her from being chased by a fire-belching VW bug. You heard me. The authorities trace Invincible to the trashed-out building where he's been holed up, and Patty goes in with the soft cell.
No, I'm a policewoman, remember, from this morning.
This morning was a long time ago. What do you want?
Just you, Captain Invincible. Just you.
But Invincible is still pretty sore about being hung out to dry by his country, and he tells Patty all about it.
In song form.
The good guys and the bad guys. Well, it ain't like old Wyatt and Doc. A man knew where he stood then, what was evil and good then, and the good guys always came out on top.
Sin number 2 for this song, Amazing How They're Alike. It's a pretty lackluster exercise in ethical nihilism and weak country pastiche, and Alan Arkin doesn't give it any kind of arc, so it just kind of stalls the movie for a few minutes. The President appeals to Invincible next, a task which nearly gets him strangled and requires him to pull out the big guns.
You remember?
Yes, I do, sir. Yes, I do. A very worthy ambition, and when you are, you can feel free to call on me at any time.
What a twist!
Turns out that when Captain Invincible pulverized Baby President's shoulder, it left a mystic mark, which represents some kind of sacred bond or unbreakable oath, or I don't know. I'm starting to think this movie resulted from a round-table writing exercise where a joint was passed along with the paper. So Captain Invincible is on board with the saving the world thing, but 30 years of straight drinking have left him in less than fighting condition. He gets airsick just from being suspended in front of a rear projection screen, his assorted superpowers, mostly magnetism and something called an amazing computer brain, are pretty erratic, and he can't quite recall his catchphrases. But Patty has managed to dig up his old costume, so that's something.
What's that?
Yours. I spent the morning in some of your favorite pawn shops.
Oh, pawn shops. I thought you said something completely different.
Never mind.
Through all this, Invincible and Patty bond over catching him up on the latest developments in technology and women's lib, and learning about his origin story, which involves voyeuristic aliens causing his conception to go all neon-lined. The less said of this, the better.
How do you feel?
Eventually, the captain starts having a crisis of faith, and the revelation that Patty basically tracked him down to snag a big promotion doesn't help matters much. But Patty bolsters him with sin number 3, Heaven in Your Eyes.
Don't get discouraged, look to the skies. I will beside you, whatever you try. Don't lose your courage, just know you can fly. 'Cause I see heaven in your eyes.
This song is a summary of everything I dislike about late 70s, early 80s light rock. The cheesy synths, the awkward syncopation, the syrupy vocals. Also, this is the worst speaking voice singing dub matchup I've seen since Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, although that might be deliberate.
'Cause I see.
I'll do it.
So the dopey ballad convinces Invincible to stay on task, but little does he know that Mr. Midnight's assortment of lackeys have been keeping tabs on him.
And that lady cop I was telling you about? She's with that slob that's been getting all the VIP treatment.
Would you be good enough to elaborate on the slob, number 19?
See, that is the type of line you can only truly do justice if you're Christopher Lee. It should come as no surprise that Lee is this movie's saving grace. His prolific film career didn't give him near enough opportunities to show off his impressive singing pipes, so any movie that gives him a chance to let loose with a villain song deserves some credit. Add in some good old-fashioned I'm Christopher fucking Lee and I can make any old crap sound impressive monologuing, and you have a magnificent ham and cheese performance.
But it is. After all these years, it is. I knew that Captain Invincible was beaten, broken, a drunken clown. And content with the pleasure that knowledge gave me, I foolishly stayed my hand.
Captain Invincible now has enough control of his powers. Don't ask, dear boy, he just does. To track down one of Midnight's hench weirdos with his amazing computer brain. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough control to keep his amazing computer brain from going on a wiki walk, eventually degenerating into nonsense babbling. Much like the rest of the script.
From there, Broadway soared to a height of activity in the 1920s when 80 theaters started. Since then, the number but not the quality of the theaters has gone into steady decline.
No matter, he does manage to pin down the location of Midnight's secret lair, which is concealed behind a vacuum store? Man, at least the Batman special guest villains understood the importance of branding. Midnight is somehow able to cause the vacuums to rise up and attack our heroes in what looks like a student film knockoff of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, this really sucks.
You went there. You seriously went there. While they get out of this scrape, let's take a moment to deal with sin number 4. This movie has a lot of concepts floating about it, but it never puts them together into a cohesive whole. When you look at a spoof like Airplane or Blazing Saddles, there's a lot of silliness going on, but the plot points are still clear and connect in a coherent manner, albeit one dictated by the film's own bizarre logic. Things just happen in this movie. Invincible and Patty are attacked by vacuums, they escape. The secret government facility under the Sydney Opera House, did I forget to mention that? Gets raided and they're framed for it. They go on the lam, they take a quick flight from Australia to New York, but you can't really tell how these points fit together or why. As a result, the movie feels like a loose brainstorm of things to do with a superhero spoof, and the things it does do are seldom as funny as they could be. Case in point, Into the Blue, a Sinatra knockoff that stalls the movie so we can watch Patty riding Captain Invincible's ass. And not in the fun way.
Into the blue, I've just begun to fight. No evil force can match the strength of right.
Obviously, this is meant to parody the flying scene in Superman, but compare this bit from Hot Shots. It includes more direct visual references, a decent punchline, and is much shorter, all of which make it more effective than this rear projection snorefest. Meanwhile, Mr. Midnight has finally gotten around to explaining his evil plan to his pet monkey rodent gelfling thing, and can we talk about how it's been a pretty lame plan based on what we've seen so far? I mean, Mr. Midnight gets his hands on a hypno-ray and he uses it to, what? Mind control crude ethnic stereotypes into buying into a real estate scam? What's his endgame here?
When the pure genetic Americans discover what I have done to clean up that rotting cesspool that they call New York, their gratitude to me will be boundless. They will carry me into the White House upon their shoulders. And our plan will spread to every corner of the land.
Okay, so he's targeting minorities and exploiting Americans' latent racism in a bid to seize political power. Now I don't hate this plan because it makes no sense. I hate it because it makes too much sense. Anyway, somehow in all this mess, Invincible has figured out Mr. Midnight is behind, well, everything, and he's prepping for the big confrontation in his old hideout in the Statue of Liberty's head. Most of said preparation involves complaining about how the country has gone to here, and he wants to get back to the good old days. Speaking of the good guys and the bad guys sounding a lot alike.
I'm just gonna sit up here in Miss Liberty and wait for 1950 to come around again. And with it, Jack Dempsey, the Polo Grounds, the NBC Blue Network, Harry God bless him, Truman, and maybe when hell freezes over, some good old-fashioned pride in this country.
Invincible sees a poster identical to the one from the evil vacuum store at a kosher deli and goes to investigate. It should come as no surprise that the proprietor is not Jewish, is doing Midnight's dirty work, and is in possession of a fish gun. Okay, that last one may come as a bit of a surprise. Gentile mook is dealt with, but Invincible falls through a trapdoor into Mr. Midnight's evil sanctum, where the final confrontation begins with the villain making a big speech about how Invincible is a relic of a bygone age, and who cares? It's Christopher Lee monologuing.
You're a walking anachronism, Captain. A paltry, puffed-up notion of a day long past, and an entity whose tickets to oblivion is about to be punched.
Captain Invincible makes his way past the alligator pit and the snake pit and the peach pit. Don't knock it, those things are high in cyanide. But Mr. Midnight has an ace in the hole, for he knows his arch-nemesis's one true weakness. Hey, it's not a bunch of glowy green rocks, but if it works, it works. And get ready for the most wonderfully bizarre, puntastic villain song you've ever seen.
I got some economic hawks, a gin and tonic on the rocks, where angels fear to tread. I say, choose your booze, let's hit the red eye!
But before Midnight can convince the desperate Invincible to down a can of cooking fuel, which would kill him, I guess? I'm still fuzzy on the nature and limits of his superhero abilities here. Patty sends out a broadcast on Invincible's beloved American Eagle network and reinvigorates his hope in truth, justice, and the copyright-friendly way.
Captain, they're playing your song.
Captain Invincible uses his magnetic mojo to mess with Mr. Midnight's computer, but not before Midnight sets off the explosions that break the various ethnic suburbias off the mainland and into the ocean. Midnight drowns or explodes in the resulting villain lair collapse, and Invincible flies off to save the civilians.
The ethnic populations trapped on the floating sections were rescued by Captain Invincible from a submarine attack masterminded by arch-criminal Mr. Midnight, although this has not been confirmed.
So that's it then? Just some rear projection flying and an exposition reporter coming in to wrap things up? Wow, what a half-assed way to finish your movie. Speaking of half-assed, Invincible trying to deliver what amounts to the movie's moral proves that inspirational speeches are definitely not one of his superpowers.
Together, we're part of the roughest, toughest, biggest, kindest, fairest, bestest darn gang in the whole world. Okay, everybody, this time, let's do it right.
On the scale of weird-ass shit that should only be viewed with the aid of controlled substances, The Return of Captain Invincible ranks below the likes of Xanadu and the Apple, but above Can't Stop the Music. The humor has a decidedly uncomfortably dated slant to it, and the whole thing feels like it never got past the second draft stage, but there's quite a bit of amusement to be had. Some of it is even intentional. And hey, how can you say no to Christopher Lee as a singing supervillain? I'd issue punishments, but honestly, this movie defies any attempt to punish it. It exists in its own weird little universe where the normal values we apply to film would be meaningless. About the only thing you can do is go along with the crazy for 90 minutes. Copious booze helps. There's even a drinking song to help you along. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in musical hell is now adjourned.
Hey, nothing important going on here. I just wanted to say thank you to the people who stuck it out this far. Good for you. That's some good pizza.
Why are we still here?
Oh, you know, this is the part where they drop hints at future films upcoming in the series. You know, like every Marvel Cinematic Universe film ever made. And some other films that don't get sequels. Looking at you, Dragon Ball Evolution.
Come on, this is a cheap review show with no overarching narrative. I would know. There couldn't possibly be any hints to drop.
Oh, I wouldn't say that!